Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Kade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi everyone, I'm Kade, and welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight show. Today, I am so fortunate to have children's book author Rae Rankin on the show. Welcome, Rae. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Carly. This is so fun.
Rae Rankin is an independent marketing and graphic design consultant transplanted from sunny Central California to the wilds of Utah. After 2 landlocked years, no, the Great Salt Lake is not a substitute, her family was transferred to the Pacific Northwest. 4 years later, she has come full circle and returned to California. Rae has always had a passion for writing and reading. Cowgirl Lessons was her first children's book. She released Beach Day and Cowgirl Christmas in 2018 and Mountain Girl in 2019. She is currently working on a 5th children's book. Rae lives with a loving, supporting husband, here's to horse husbands, teenage daughter that is an equestrian, a dog who has her own business cards, and a neurotic cat who eats plastic houseplants. Now that is quite an introduction. I would love to hear more about your daughter and your fur babies, specifically a dog who has her own business cards and a neurotic cat who eats plastic houseplants. It sounds like you have a lot of entertainment going on over there.
I definitely do. So kind of the dog, we'll start with there. She is an official rogue dog. If you've ever heard of rogue beers, they have dog mascots, and she is a rogue dog ambassador and does really have her own business cards that says Penny Sue Rogue Dog Ambassador.
Well, tell us more about how did that happen? And tell us more about a rogue dog ambassador. I don't know that I've ever heard of that. I'd love to know.
Yes, so there's a brewery called Rogue, and they are an Oregon brewery, and they've always had a lab as a mascot, and they welcome dogs into their brew houses. And a few years ago, they ran a contest to get your dog as a Rogue Dog Ambassador. And so we submitted a picture of our dog with Rogue beer, and she won a spot. And so she is a Rogue Dog Ambassador. So we can take her with us into all the breweries, and she has an official collar that's a Rogue beer collar and her business cards, and away we go.
How cool is that? How fun. You have a famous dog. That's
yeah,
so
right. And she does have her own Instagram account, and it's Rogue Dog Penny. So if you want to check out her on Instagram, she's there.
That is so cool. How fun. Everybody go gallop over there and check her out. Rogue Dog Penny on Instagram. That's exciting.
Yes. And then we have a rescue cat that for some reason, the only thing, she doesn't eat regular houseplants, but we have this plastic, decorative planter that we've had for a while, and she'll jump up wherever it's been. She'll jump up on the counter and eat it. And it's like, why are you eating that? It's plastic. But she continues to eat it no matter where we go.
That is hilarious.
I tried putting it up high because she is rather fat because she's a house cat, but she'll jump up wherever it is and just mow it down.
Wow, that's I wonder if there's any nutritional value in plastic. Probably not.
I don't know. Apparently she thinks so. So
that's awesome.
And then you asked about our daughter. So we have a 14-year-old daughter, obviously, and she has been writing since she was 6. We actually put her on her first horse at 3, but she did start taking lessons here in California on Duchess, who is the star of my books. She was an Arabian Welsh pony, and she just absolutely loves horses. She continued to ride when we were in Washington. She rode for an Appaloosa barn, and they do a lot of Western and that sort of thing. So then when we came back, we started riding again with her same instructor, and so she's riding on a youth Arabian team, and they've been the national champions for 2016 and 2018.
Wow,
So
that's
hopefully,
exciting.
yeah, they did really well this year. So we're hoping for another national championship.
So Rae, obviously you're a horse show mom, and
Yeah.
horse show moms are very important. They take care of all the things behind the scenes and help their children, do the best they can in the show pen. And you have a lot of responsibility being a horse show mom. Were you a horse rider or horse lover, or was your daughter the first step you took into the world of horses?
Actually, no, it's kind of been in our family for a long, long time. My mother and my grandmother used to spend summers in Wyoming. They lived in Chicago. My grandfather was a chef on the Santa Fe Railroad. And so they used to go down and they'd stop in Wyoming and they'd hop off the train and they'd stay there for a month and ride at a ranch in Wyoming. And then when my sister and I were growing up, my mom would take us out to one of the doctor's ranches in Northern California. He had a bunch of horses. We'd ride there. And then on my husband's side, everybody rides horses there. So it's kind of full circle.
That's fantastic. So it runs in the family, this love of horses. How
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. So, thank you for introducing us to your furry friends with their fun stories and your daughter, the equestrian. And you talked about your loving, supportive husband in your bio, which is, we can't do it without our horse husbands. And it's fantastic that he loves horses too. I'm getting my hubby into horses as well. So that kind of like moves us into the space where we can talk about, your books. You write children's books. So, and the first one was Cowgirl Lessons, which I loved and adored and purchased as Christmas gifts for my nieces, and they totally love those books. So what excites you about writing children's books? Like how did you decide to do that and take that on?
Well, I've been writing forever, as long as I can remember. I think about like the first story that I can remember writing was actually a horse story. This will probably date me. I grew up in a small town in Northern California called Mount Shasta, and Mount Shasta is a volcano. And in third grade, that was when Mount St. Helens erupted for the first time. And so our teacher was teaching us about volcanoes and everything. And so I wrote this story about this horse dragging a rock up to the top of the mountain and plugging the volcano with this giant rock. So that's kind of my first horse story that I ever wrote. Mm-hmm. And then I've been writing kind of off and on, but had never published anything. And leads us to Cowgirl Lessons. I had heard that our loving Duchess, the horse that Lizzie rode, had passed away. And I wanted to memorialize her because she had such an impact on all the kids that rode for white horse dressage out here. And so I kind of wanted to keep her alive, if you will, because she was so special. And so I had started writing what I thought was going to be just a poem. And the more I got into it, is like, I could turn this into a children's book and share that love with everybody. And then, of course, there's that whole process of illustrators and all that. So as soon as I had done that first one, it was like I kind of found myself, and seeing that connection with the kids and the parents. And after that first book, Cowgirl Lessons, and I was just like, this is it.
You found your calling. That's so fantastic. And good on you for memorializing Duchess. The horses are such a special thing, and they touch us in so many different ways. And that's such a lovely way to, remember a horse that touched your life. So that's really cool. So you've written 4 children's books so far. Obviously we're talking about your calling, and you're working on a 5th. So, and not all of them have horses, but they do follow the same character. Is that right? Like, tell us a little bit about your character and her journeys that she's been experiencing in her books through the series.
Yeah, so I kind of model it after my family. So, it's my husband, myself, and our daughter, and the dog, Penny. She's in Beach Day. But just kind of our adventures have so far. But I do it purposefully. I don't actually name any of the people in the books, except for Miss Valerie, who is the instructor, because I want the kids to be able to say, "Oh, that's me," when they're reading the book, and not give them a name. So that it's a challenge that way. But that's kind of was my thought process as I was doing it.
That's
So
really unique. That's really unique. I haven't heard of that before. And I think you wrote them so well. I didn't even realize the characters didn't have names except for Miss Valerie, but that's right.
yeah,
That's really
they
interesting.
don't. So, obviously the horses have names. Duchess is so far the only one named, but it's kind of funny because the ones that are in the book actually are modeled after horses that have been in our life. Um, so Cowgirl Lessons obviously is the first one about the lessons, and the Cowgirl Christmas, the Christmas story. And then Beach Day takes place in one of our favorite beach spots in Oregon. And Mountain Girl takes place in a small mountain town that we like to go to just north of Tahoe. And there is actually a scene in there where they do go horseback riding. So they came in that way. And then the newest book that I'm working on now, I'll just tease you guys, is Cowgirl and the Ghost Horse. So it's kind of my first venture that's not quite like something that's happened. So it's a little more imaginative, but we'll see the horse come back.
Fun. That's so exciting. And I love that this is, your calling and what you wanted to do. I had a lot of fun preparing for this interview and galloping around your website and your blog and taking a look at the things that you're up to. And you have some really informative blog posts on your blog. So in one of them, you mentioned that it is really important for someone before they get too far down the path of being an author to do their research on the business aspect of this career. And what I'll link to that blog post in the show notes here so people can go and read your full blog post, which was really wonderful. But what do you think are some of the need to knows or resources that you would recommend aspiring authors to look into before they even get to the point of publishing a book? Obviously, writing your book first is the most important thing to do, like get the words on paper
Right.
before you go into any of this stuff, because after you've written the book, then all these things fall into place. So write the book first, but then,
Right.
when you're looking to get ready to publish, what are some of the things that you recommend, Rae?
Well, if you do and you can, talk to a business lawyer for sure, because there's so many things that aspects of running a business that you just may not know, or even your accountant. But you need to go online, check the local laws. Like, do I need a city business license? Do I need a county business license? Does my state require me to have a business license? Do all those pieces, because some states may not even require you to have a license. But like here in California, I have to have a county business license. And then, of course, if you're going to sell, you have to have a resale permit, at least in California. But those are the things that a good business lawyer will be able to tell you. And again, the internet is a huge resource. I know the state of California has a small business administration. Check with them, because there's so much information there. Even though you don't really think, oh, I'm an author, I'm a business. Am I a business? Am I not a business? But you are. Eventually, you're going to be selling those books. And so you do have to account for it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously check for the laws that may impact you.
And that's great advice. And don't let it scare you off either. It's just, I think this is a cautionary tale of like making sure you dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into, because you are starting a business. And I think, that was something that I think surprised me when I, wrote my book. It's like, yes, you're creative, but there's also this, legal aspect to what you're creating and doing that you're going to be accountable for. So just knowing what you need to be responsible for before you run out of the gate is always a great way to prepare and help you on this journey. So thank you for sharing that, Rae. That's important information.
In my case, I was lucky. I've worked with companies who've started businesses from the ground up. So I kind of knew some of those steps, but there's so many people, like you're saying, you get started, you write this book, and suddenly you're like, now what?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And don't forget, other authors are resources. A lot of people reach out to me and ask me questions. I'm sure you get a lot of questions too, Rae, and we're here, we're a community, so we can help you if you get stuck, or where do I start, or always happy to unite, authors unite. So
exactly, for sure.
Yeah. And what's really exciting and interesting to me is that you decided to independently publish your children's books. Is that right?
I did.
Yeah. Would you tell us a little bit about why you decided to go that route?
Well, I started when I first had cowgirl lessons ready to go, and I had done some research. I had actually helped a friend of mine who wrote a book called Together. His name is Derek Hines. Not a horse book, but it's a really cute book. I helped him put his book together, and he decided to self-publish. But I did a bunch of research before I helped him, and it was interesting to, when you're working with children's books, that the publishers just want the story. They don't want the artwork. They would rather just take it, publish it, or take it and get the illustrator and put it together. So you don't have any control over that. And I had initially submitted cowgirl lessons to several different publishing companies, and I had not heard back. And after so many months, you're like, okay, enough. I've got the rejection. I get it. And I decided I would do the self-publishing route and just see what happened, And after I had done that, it was like, okay, now I like this because I'm in control of everything. I control the art, I control the editing, I control how I market. And even if you're traditionally published, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to help you market. So in a sense, I'm still doing it all, whether I was traditionally published or independently published. So I have since done the independent marketing or independent publishing, and it's working for me.
That's fantastic. And your books are so beautiful and terrific. And I love the illustrations. I love that you have the creative control over how that turned out, because they're so cute and perfect. I think they perfectly fit the book, which is a great segue into, how did you go about finding your illustrator for these wonderful children's books? And what do people need to know? And what did you learn about actually working with an illustrator? Like, I'm sure you have to share rights or there's probably a lot of moving pieces there. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually found my illustrator on Fiverr. It's a great site, and it can be a terrible site. I mean, there's pluses and minuses. I say go in it and check it out. It's great, but also go in with caution, because there's a lot of just people who aren't, I don't know what the word I want is, but there are some people out there who want to take advantage of people like us that are looking for illustrators or any kind of job you can get off there. But I got lucky, and I found Jason, who is an art student in Peru, of all places. And I started working with him on cowgirl lessons, and then obviously have continued. But now I work directly with him. I don't use the Fiverr system anymore. So I would say the things about finding an illustrator, obviously you need to find someone who creates art that for what you want, because there's tons of different things out there, different styles, that sort of thing. But then when you're getting ready to work with them, obviously you want to discuss cost. Now, see, with Jason, I work illustration by illustration with him, but I could also work like the whole, just one lump sum. Like I'd pay him so much money, and then he does all the illustrations. It's just easier for me to work with him one at a time. And then I own the commercial rights for all the art. So
very important.
The art,
important.
The art technically is still his because he was creative, but I can use the art for commercial, so I could put it on cards or posters or anything like that and sell that if I wanted to. I think that's really, really critical.
Say, would you talk a little bit about that? Did you build that into like your agreement or legal document with him? Mm-hmm. Would you talk a little bit more about that? I think that's important.
So just when we were working together to just discuss what was going to happen, and with the documents, just made sure that all that was tidied up. And that's, again, go back into getting your lawyer and getting your people together so that when you make these agreements that, you have the commercial rights to your art.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. And then I imagine before you found Jason, you probably had to, I don't know, interview or get samples from various different artists until you found what you were looking for with Jason. Did you have to go through quite a few illustrators before you found him, or?
I did. I had about 4 that I went through before I chose him, and just different styles. So I knew kind of what I was looking for, but finding the person to actually come up with it. I mean, it's 10, well, maybe 1,000 times better than what I anticipated. But, you know, and it's interesting too to watch him progress, because I think he's gotten better as we've gone along, you know, more details and whatnot. But that process of seeing what people can produce, because there's, believe it or not, there's, just like writing, there's a lot of good stuff out there and there's a lot of bad stuff out there. And so finding that right fit.
Yeah, and you obviously did. I mean, your books are beautiful, and his work is fantastic, and it's just, the horses are so cute, and I just love the artwork. So you definitely found the right person to match your stories. So I'm interested in how the independent process of formatting a children's book looks like. How did you do that? Because, you know, like, children's books are different shapes, and you know, certain kinds of paper to make it have the shiny sheen, and then, you know, and who did you use to actually independently publish that? Did you go through Amazon's arm, or did you use another system? I'm just so curious, because children's books are completely different from my realm. I write fiction, so I would love to hear about the process of formatting for self-publication.
So I did a lot of research before I even started, even before I started working with Jason, because I wanted to know, like, things like standard size for your book. You know, there's traditional sizes for children's books, and then there's non-traditional sizes. And so I did research on that and found out that bookstores don't like to carry a book if it's not a traditional size. So making sure I chose something that was a traditional size was important. And that was just a matter of doing research, finding children's author pages, like groups on Facebook, and asking questions of people like you and me, and saying, what do I do? And so making that determination, that was a starting point. I also I happen to be a graphic designer, so I did all the layout and formatting for my book. But if you're not a graphic designer, finding a good graphic designer, and you can go out, there's all kinds of resources for that, and you don't have to pay a ton of money to have that done. So because I have that experience, I knew how to lay out a book, I knew the process, and I even researched what type of font to use in a children's book, because there's a big difference, they say, in the type of lettering you use in a book that makes it easier for children to read. So things that you want to, types of font types that you want to use and font types that you don't. For example, I see a lot of books with Comic Sans, and that is like a graphic designer's nightmare. They see that and we're like, no, don't use that. And it really is not a good font to use for a children's book. So, you know, little things like that are important. And so, again, doing research and finding out the best way to set up a book. And there's, on one of my blog posts, there's a link to a lovely site where she talks, another lady, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she talks about the actual layout and what you have to think about when you're putting a book together, like the page numbers, and everything has to be divisible by 4, because that's how they build books. So things like that you need to know.
Wow. It sounds like there's a lot that goes into it, but you did the work. You did your due diligence. You made sure you knew what you were doing before you went in. And then, of course, it helps that you have the graphic design experience. I think a lot of us independently published authors out here, we have a little bit of corporate background that helps us a little bit in taking on our endeavors. So, and I imagine the graphic design was in a program like Photoshop or
I use InDesign and Adobe Product InDesign to do that. I do use Photoshop because a lot of times Jason will, when he submits the photos to me, they're in an RGB, which is red, green, blue, for a computer screen, and I have to convert those to a 4-color process, so CMYK. So I do use Photoshop for that. And so knowing those sorts of things are important, because the publishers like for instance, I do use Amazon, and I do use Ingram Spark, and I can talk about that in a minute. But it's important that when you're submitting your book, that you're submitting it in the proper format. And the colors won't be as true if you don't submit it in the CMYK, a 4-color process. So knowing those things is important.
Oh, absolutely. And so let me ask you a question. This might be a little like, off the beaten path, but I'm curious, would you ever consider consulting or doing side projects around formatting for other horsebook authors? I'm just wondering if you would be a good resource for that, or if it's too daunting and it takes away from what you're actually up to.
In my many hats that I wear. No.
Right.
I was talking to my loving husband, as I say, the other night, and he got roped into doing something for his Masonic Lodge, and I just laughed at him. I said, "You have sucker written on your forehead just like me." So yeah, it would depend on the project. I wouldn't mind consulting so much. I would have to see if I have the time to balance actually doing the project, because obviously with being an equestrian mom and being at the barn, how many days a week I'm at the barn and writing and
Absolutely. And I ask the question because you're a womanpreneur like I am. And sometimes, it's really interesting to have different opportunities to bring, resources in or money into the business. So I didn't know if that was something that maybe one day that you would put out there and was
I don't say no, because, and even if it's just helping people get in the right direction, I am definitely available for any of those kind of questions.
That's wonderful. It means so much to me when we all work together to support each other, because I think we're stronger when we work together, and, we all have so much knowledge in different areas. I'm always the first one to say, "Hey, I'll help you." And thank you for being
Yes.
that kind of person too. So that's really wonderful. Yeah. So yeah. And based on what you were saying, I'm just so curious, what font did you end up going with for your children's books? So Comic Sans is like an absolute no-no.
Comic Sans is no-no. So if you open your computer and use Comic Sans, hear my voice in your head, don't do it.
So you're going to be behind me, smacking me in the back of the head.
Yeah, exactly. I see people that use it. I was on some group page the other day, and they're like, "I'm going to use this font for my coloring book." I'm like, "No, please don't."
So why is Comic Sans such a no-no? Is it, what is it about it?
It's it has that, because it was so overused back in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. It just is a font that all graphic designers just freak out when you use, because it's kind of like a little kid's font, but it's not one that's easy for them to read. So
lesson learned, people. No Comic Sans.
No. I use a font called Filson Soft for my books.
Okay.
And it has a nice weight to it and easy to read, kind of like when your kids are learning how to write and their letters are so precise and lines are straight. And
that's so great. So that's something that I wouldn't have known. So you just offered a big piece of advice to people who are starting on their adventures around children's books. So thank you for sharing that. So, and again, going back to your blog, like I said, I had fun learning about you on your blog and checking out, what you're doing there. You wrote another blog post, and I think this goes back to being prepared on the business side of being an author, but you wrote a blog post about the importance of ISBNs. This topic I know can be confusing for a new author. And I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about ISBNs and why knowing about them is really important for a book's success.
I think the most critical thing is every book that's published has to have an identification number. And it's very easy to go down that path if you're publishing with Amazon to take their free book identifier. But the thing to know about that is if you're using that Amazon book identifier, you are not going to be in books in print. And books in print, obviously, is out there so people can see what's being published. And so I think it's, for an independent author anyway, for sure. Obviously, if you're traditional, you'll have an ISBN from your publishing house. But as an independent author, again, it goes back to control. You're the one controlling everything. And if you're using your own numbers identifying your books, you have full and complete control. And if you want to make sure it's out there where you can get it into a school, or you can get it into a library, or you can get it into Barnes and Noble or Powell's or some of the other independent bookstores, that's important. And they will not carry your book if it doesn't have an ISBN.
Right. And you talked in the blog post about how if you go with the Amazon free ISBN, then Amazon becomes the publisher of your book.
Correct.
That's correct. And it won't be published under your publishing house or the name that you choose. It's an Amazon product essentially. Right. And then it can't transfer to these other places, because we talk about multiple streams of income. And when you're Amazon exclusive, that eliminates all the other areas that you can be selling your books, independent bookstores. Yeah, obviously. So tell people where they can get their own ISBN numbers that work for all the major book distributors in different places.
So that is Bowker.com. They are the only official place. So you could go out there, and if you type ISBN, a ton of things come up, and there are resellers out there, but they're actually buying blocks of numbers and then reselling them. And so you have to be extremely careful with that, because once again, you are not in control of that number, and there could be another publishing house. And if that publisher goes out of business, suddenly your book is out there floating because there's no publisher for it. Even though technically you're the publisher, it's not, when you look at the whole thing, if you're using somebody else's ISBN number, then you don't have that control. So take the time, spend the money. I know it's expensive. I bought a block of 10 with my first.
I do that too. I buy the blocks of 10.
Because in the long run, it's more cost effective. One is like 125 and 10 is $295, I think. And it just makes so much more sense. Plus, as I mentioned in the blog post, you have to have a different ISBN if you do hardcover, softcover, ebook. Each of those have to have their own ISBN.
Audiobook too has to have their own ISBN. Yeah. So each version of one book has to have an individual ISBN. Correct. So the website is Bowker, BOWKER.com, and that is the official site for buying your ISBNs, and it's the only seller of the official ISBN. So again, it's BOWKER.com, and I'll link to that in the show notes. And Rae, that is hugely valuable information for authors. Thank you for telling us about that.
And as I mentioned also in my blog, that blog post is watch, because they do specials sometimes where you might get 10% off, and it's worth it. Check if you belong to a literary society, like I belong to the Society for Children's Books, Writers and Illustrators. Those groups sometimes put out discounts for buying ISBN. So check your resources before you just go out and buy that. Okay.
And it's a very important investment in your business and your books.
Absolutely.
This investment will last for the life of the books and eventually pay for themselves. So important tip, get your ISBNs from Bowker. Another thing I'm really interested in is your books are available through Ingram Spark. And would you talk a little bit about what it is like to publish through Ingram Spark? And then do you publish exclusively with Ingram Spark, or do you use other publishing sites at the same time? I'm curious, because I know there's some real value to working with Ingram Spark, because they have a larger distribution arm than what Amazon does. You can actually, libraries can order the books, bookstores can order the books. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with Ingram Spark and what it's like to publish with them?
Yeah, so I actually publish on two arms. So I do publish through Amazon, through KDP. That's their latest version of, or their latest platform for publishing. And I do that specifically so I can have the book available on Amazon, ready to ship. So, you can buy it Prime, for example. And then I also publish through Ingram Spark just for the sake of getting it so libraries and schools, like you mentioned. And it's pretty much the same, like preparing the actual file. The interior file is pretty much the same preparation. The cover is a little different, just because they have different specs. So spending that time and understanding what they want, obviously, as a graphic designer, I can figure that out. But if you're working with a graphic designer, have them do the research through KDP and through Ingram Spark, because obviously there's different ways to set that up. So Ingram Spark is really great in terms of the fact that you do have the ability to get into the schools and the bookstores, the independent bookstores. They'll be able to purchase your books through them. So going through them, you can do obviously soft cover, you can do hardcover, and you have the ability to choose better paper stock through Ingram Spark versus Amazon. So there is that difference. The other part, the kind of thing you have to weigh is when you print your book through Ingram Spark, it does cost more than a book printed through Amazon. So you have to kind of take those things into consideration. So you will, obviously make a little less money on the Ingram Spark book because it does cost more. The quality of the paper is better. So there's that toss-up. So, and in terms of actually uploading your book, there is a fee associated with that. And again, I tell you, go out online, Google coupon codes, because as of right now, I have not paid for a single book on Ingram Spark. I've uploaded them all for free. So I'm just go out there. There's lots of places you can get codes that will help you, publish your book there for free. So all of my books are available both places. Now, as I mentioned, the reason that I have Amazon and that ability is if I went solely through Ingram Spark and just had my paperback book through Ingram Spark, and I could distribute on Amazon, but it's not always in stock. So if someone were to go order it on Amazon, it could take 2 to 3 weeks for them to ship it, because they've got to communicate to Ingram Spark, and Ingram Spark fills the order and it goes from there. They don't buy stock and keep it. Amazon doesn't buy stock and keep it to ship. So that can be a big problem when you come down to like selling books at Christmas time, because you go to buy a book and 2 to 3 weeks, people will move on and go do something else.
Wow, that's a really great point to make. So it's important to publish in both places. And then with Ingram Spark, I imagine you just uncheck the distribute to Amazon box when you look where you want it distributed. So that brings up something else interesting that I'd like to ask you. So when you do order copies of your books for a library event or a reading, which you do a lot of in-person book signings and readings because you have children's books, and I think that's really lovely. Where do you choose to purchase your books from? Do you buy them from Amazon print on demand, or do you order them from Ingram because of the better quality of the paper? Which one do you choose for your own personal events?
It's actually kind of a toss-up. I've done both. It usually, because I try not to keep a ton of books in stock, because they are more expensive than, they're $3 to $4 a piece. Now, I could go and have them printed in China. I know a lot of people do that, but they have to do that in quantities of 1,000. I'm not doing big enough events yet where I need 1,000 copies of a book. So I look at how fast can I get the book, and quality obviously is important too. So I do want to make sure I'm getting the best quality. So a lot of times I will use Ingram Spark, but that does mean the toss-up is you don't make as much money off of a book. Not that I'm ever going to be rich. Well, maybe I will.
We're all going to be rich. Yay! I know it's tough being an author. I mean, every book you sell, you only make a couple dollars because of all the everything that goes into it. So these millionaire authors have sold like billions of books, I only imagine, and sold movie rights and different things like that. So that's why it's important to retain your rights, because it becomes a movie or takes off in another country, it's still your product, and you see the money from that. So I will say, Rae, that I have ordered several of your books on Amazon, and I think the quality is actually fantastic. They're beautiful. So, I would love to maybe one day when we meet up, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, which I think we're going to do in December, and I'm really excited about at the Equus Film Festival. We'll get into that in a second, but I would love to see like the side-by-side product just to see the difference, because I think the Amazon product is beautiful. And
I have not. I've had a very few problems with Amazon. I hear horror stories all the time, but the last problem I had wasn't actually in the printing; it was in the way they shipped the books to me. So I had some damaged books because for some reason I ordered a huge quantity of books, and they shipped most of them in a nice box, all packed up, really nice. And then they sent me like 2 books in an envelope. And it was the 2 books in the envelope that were all bent up. And I'm like, I can't use these. So they become my reader books when I'm reading to kids and stuff. But,
did you reach out to Amazon and tell them that the product was damaged? Did they replace it?
Yeah.
Oh,
they did.
Yeah. See, that's good. Yeah.
They're really good about that.
Good. Yeah. I've actually really liked working with Amazon a lot too. Besides when they get into pulling down, authentic reviews from my page, which hasn't happened in a really long time, but that's a whole other topic. But working with Amazon has been pretty great. So going back to your book readings, and you do a lot of book signings and in-person readings for children at libraries and schools. I was wondering if you'd share a little bit about how you set yourself up for success in an event, and a lot of times people reach out to me and be like, how many books do I bring to this event? And, how do you determine the amount of books? I think it's really, really hard, because some events are really awesome and you don't expect them to be, and other events are, not awesome and you don't sell a lot of books. It just depends. So talk a little bit about your success.
Yeah, it really is kind of a guessing game, because you don't know how many people may come to an event. I'm doing the Great Valley Book Fest next week, and it's down in Central California, and I'm a little nervous because I'm like, this is like the biggest event I've been to, and I'm thinking, okay, how many books do I bring? Because I just don't know. And I was at the Children's Book Festival, the Scholar Shared Children's Book Festival, about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and met another author who I hadn't known, but she's from this area. And she's actually going to be at the Great Valley Book Fest. And I said, well, how many books do I bring? I know there's like supposed to be 5,000 to 6,000 people at this event. And she says, oh, I only bring about 10 copies of each of my titles. And I'm like, 10 copies? I'm like, oh, I could sell out, but so it really is a guessing game. I was up in Gray Eagle. It's the little mountain town that is at the central part of my book, Mountain Girl. And I did a book signing outside of this little store, and I did 45 books in 2 hours.
Fantastic.
So, and we're talking about a little small town.
Yeah.
But, it's,
you
never know.
Yeah. I kind of, I base how many books I bring on, like if I'm traveling, like if I have to get on a plane, if I do a local event, I just leave all my books in my trunk. And then, if I need more, I'll go get them. But as a rule of thumb, when I go to, and sometimes I sell out, but sometimes I don't sell any or very many, So as a rule of thumb, when I'm traveling, I usually take like 25 of each of my books, which weighs a lot, because, my book,
well, yours are thicker. Yeah.
You're lucky because yours are smaller because they're children's books. So you can throw 100 in there and it's pretty easy, but yeah, so it's all a guessing game. And then, so we talked about quantities of books. So do you do anything, do you have any like special giveaways, or do you have a special display, or do you do any special outreach to set your events up for success when you go to these?
Yeah, I try to do a bunch of marketing ahead of time. I'm actually finding that boosting Facebook posts, believe it or not, are actually helping. That event that I went to up in the mountains, I had done that for a week ahead of time, and did some other things like reached out to the local newspaper and posted, just go online and search for any event calendar that will let me post something for free, and going and putting something out there. But the Facebook post, I was so amazed at how many people came by because they're like, oh, I float on Facebook. And I was
Wow.
like, there you go. And it's pretty affordable. I think I spent $20 and had, I want to say 900 hits, if you will. I mean, obviously I didn't have 900 people, but just that and getting that exposure, I had a bunch more people following my author page. So there's a whole bunch of positives that can come out of that. So I do that to start with. And then obviously at the event, just being there and getting people around and talking about it.
Cool. Well, congratulations. I mean, I've seen pictures from your author events, and they always look like you're having a great time, and the kids are loving the books, and it's a great way. I think events are a great way to get out there and be seen and have additional sales and take you out of the online world because you're interacting with people and people are learning about you. I really enjoy doing events. Just, it's a little different. We can be kind of introverted as authors, sitting in our houses doing our, our work and getting out to events. I always find that I'm really inspired and I meet some really, really cool people when I go to events. So I love seeing that you're doing that. Speaking of events, congratulations.
I did buy my airline tickets this morning.
I did. I bought mine yesterday. So congratulations. Your books, Cowgirl Lessons and Cowgirl Christmas, are Equus Film Festival literary nominees. And I'm so excited. You just emailed me and said that it looks like you will be coming to Kentucky in December this year. The Equus Film Festival is at the Kentucky Horse Park, and there's a big literary corral, which I'm helping out with all the authors. So I'm so excited you're coming, Rae. So tell us a little bit about how you feel about the festival and how you learned about it, and what you're excited about going to the event this year.
Well, I learned about it from you, actually. You had posted about your award, and I was like so excited and happy about that. And then I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. So, because I hadn't, and it's so exciting when we as independent authors get the recognition. Mm-hmm. And so I was curious to know more about it. So I did the research and I saw that they had a children's book category. And I reached out back in January and was talking to them and said, can you tell me how to submit my books, and got the information. And I'm so excited that both books are nominees. I guess that's what we're calling it. And anyway, so we're so excited to come out there. At first when it came out and said, we could go to the literary corral, and I was like, December, how can I do that? It's so close to Christmas. My daughter's in school, all these factors. And my husband and I talked about it, and we said, okay, well, maybe you can just go out, but I don't want to just go out by myself. I want, him to be with me because he's a big part of this. Mm-hmm. I can't do what I do without him, because there are times where he's being the equestrian dad, and matter of fact, that's where they are right now, is up at the barn. So, it's important for me to have my family. And we talked about the whole aspect, and we're like, we need to pull her out of school. I know it's really important. She's a freshman, so this is like her first high school experience, so that's been a little hard. But we're like, this is a good learning experience for her as well, being at the horse park and the International Museum of the Horse, and just the film festival and the literary part. And we're like, we just have to do it. So we're very excited.
It's perfect. And for your daughter to see her very successful mom, who took on a dream of writing children's books and now being an award nominee. I mean, I think that's a really showing your daughter like anything is possible. I think that is really great too. And your family's going to have a fantastic time. There are so many wonderful people, and you get to meet and network, and just it's fun, and there's so many great movies, and your husband and your daughter, while you're talking with people that are interested in your books, are going to be entertained. I took my husband with me the first time I went, and he had a blast. Like, he had just as much fun as I did, and we did it together, and it was like a fun trip with a purpose, and it was fun. The other thing I wanted to share too is I think the venue this year is perfect, being at the Kentucky Horse Park. I mean, it's like right in the middle of horse country, but it's also in tandem with like a holiday festival that the park runs. So there's going to be tons of action going on at the park. So I'm
wow.
so excited you're coming. I'm really excited to meet you in person, and we're going to hang out and have a really great time. So congratulations again on the nominations of your books. That's exciting. So shifting gears, we talked a lot about events, and that was really good information. Is there one common myth about being an independently published author that you would like to debunk right now? I wanted to give you kind of a platform. You have so much knowledge about, all the, and you're obviously very well researched when it comes to being an independent author. Is there any myth you want to, just be like, no, that's not true?
I think the biggest myth is that people say that independently published books aren't good books. That is completely 100% wrong. I mean, look at your wonderful books, and I guess we're all biased, but there are so many people out there that are publishing really great books, and people just they need to go out and embrace them, because they are very well done.
That's fantastic, and I totally agree with you. I think independent publishing gives you a lot of power, and that's something that they want to not have you have, and so there's these rumors that they're not as good, but that's not true.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I have friends that I've made through publishing and being an author that are traditionally published, and even if they're traditionally published, nowadays the amount of work that they have to do is just as much as we do as an independent. I mean, it's okay, I have a little more because I have to work with my own illustrator and I have to have that control. But they're not, the big publishing companies, a lot of them aren't doing the marketing support and aren't doing the getting the books in different places. It's up to you. If you want to be successful, you have to do the work, regardless of where you're published. And I think that's just something that we as authors need to share so that people know that.
That's true. Actually, I just did an interview with Shelley Paulson, who is a really popular equestrian photographer, and she was talking about how when her book Horses and Portraits is traditionally published, and she was just talking about in the last interview I did that there was a contract with expectations for her that she had to commit to with this traditional publisher, and there was like, we expect the book to be at this rank on Amazon. We expect you to have, so-and-so events and send us a, update constantly on what you're doing to market the book. So the marketing, actually, a lot of the marketing falls, no matter whether you're independent or traditionally published, on the author. So it's really great to bring that to the forefront.
I know one of the things I was scared about was children's publishing too. When you talk about traditional printers, if they give you an advance on your book, so say I sold my book to a traditional publisher, it's going to be a year, maybe two, before it comes out. So then they give me an advance. Well, that advance I may have to pay it back, because if the book doesn't do as well, there's requirements for me to pay it back. And I just think that's something that you have to think about. In 2 or 3 years, your book doesn't do well, and suddenly you owe the publisher several $1,000s.
That's a scary predicament. I mean, and it's very real. Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay. Awesome information again. And then, so, just a few more questions here before I let people, before you let people know where they can find you in your books. But, I wanted to talk a little bit about what is the hardest part of being a children's book author for you? And then on the flip side, what is the best part about being a children's book author, in your opinion?
I think the hardest part about being any kind of author is time, because I'm not just a children's book author. I have to do other work. So just finding that balance of time, that's the hardest part. I would say another kind of hard part, and this is just as a children's book author, is turning off that mom gene, because as I'm writing, I'm like, you wouldn't be doing that. But I'm like, I'm letting my kid or my character go into search for a ghost horse, for example, in this new book that I'm working on. And I just have to turn that mom thing off for a minute or two. On the other hand, things I love is and it actually has been in the moment of doing a reading where I've got kids around me, I've got parents around me, and I hit that one part in the book, and the parents are all back here going, aha, and laughing because I've set something up, like for instance in Cowgirl Lessons, she's searching for her book or her boot in the laundry in her bedroom, and her bedroom's a mess, and mom comes in and finds it. And it's just that little tweak there, and the parents are just back there laughing, and the kids are like, what? But then you do something different for the kids, and then they're all giggling and enjoying the story. And just that moment right there is why I do what I do.
Oh,
exactly, right there.
That's lovely. So there's something in it for the children, and there's also something in it for the adults who are reading the books. They're really great books. Thank you for in time. Oh, that is the most difficult thing about being an author, because a lot of us have, second jobs and families and lives and fur babies and all sorts of other obligations. So, finding a time and setting a schedule to write is one of the biggest challenges.
I know. I write in my car a lot.
Do you do like voice to text and send it to yourself?
I have done that. I've done as I'm driving, it's like, Google, take this down so I don't forget, because I write in rhyme. So it's like it pops in my head. I'm driving. I'm like, I can't write it down. Or, in the middle of the night, I wake up and I keep a notebook on the side of my bed, or, I'm at work and I've got a piece of scratch paper and I'm jotting something down. So
yeah, and it's in your blood. It's clear. It's like I do all those things too. It's like as a writer, you've got to capture it when it comes to you, or else it's lost. I wake up all the time in the middle of the night and write things down on the pad by my nightstand. So it sounds like we have that.
Going, what are you doing? I'm like, I've got
an idea. Exactly the same thing over here. So we have that in common for sure. That's so funny to share. And then, so one last question. I was wondering, what makes you feel inspired or like your best self? I think I'd love to know that about you.
Oh gosh. I think just the creative process makes me inspired. I get a lot of inspiration just from things that we do that we enjoy, that I want to share. But that process of starting and then having something that I'm holding that's kind of tangible, but it's that the writing, the editing, the fixing, the working with with my illustrator to see what he comes up with. Because I give him just kind of a description usually of what I want, and what does he get? Is he going to come back with what I want? Is he not? I'm going to have to go, nope, got to start again, or that whole process is very inspirational for me.
That's exciting. Yeah. And it's like a gift. You're like giving yourself a gift, and you're creating something for others that never existed before. I mean, there's something real to be said about that creative journey. So
for sure.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with me, Rae. I've so enjoyed our conversation, and there's so much great information for current authors and aspiring authors who want to learn more about writing and the process and your journey. So would you share a little bit with folks where they can find you and your books?
Okay. So all 4 of my books are available online on Amazon. And then you can find me on Barnes & Noble, on Powells.com, or go over to my website, www.raerankin.com. And you can find links to different places you can go, like independent bookstores and
fantastic
places like that.
And the holidays are coming up. Can people order autographed copies directly from you, from your website?
They can. I will. I haven't turned on the link yet. I was working on that little bit of my website. I've had some little technological problems in the last week. My hard drive with all my books crashed.
Oh my.
Yeah. Luckily, they saved a lot of it. I didn't save all of it, but they saved a lot of it. So I've been focused on that, but I will be turning that on my website, and then they can purchase autographed copies.
Great. And you can come see us in Lexington, Kentucky at the Equus Film Festival and buy one directly from Rae, along with all the other amazing horse book authors that are going to be there. And social media. Can people get to your social media channels from your website, or would you share where you are?
So I'm on Twitter. You can find me. It's kind of a little odd name. It's Cavazzali. It's an Italian family name that I started my Twitter page on, and I just can't get rid of it. So it's the word cave, C-A-V-E, 2 Z's, A-L-E. So that's my name on Twitter. And then on Instagram, it's Rae Rankin Author, and same on Facebook, Rae Rankin Author.
Fantastic. And I will link to all those places in the show notes, so people don't have to, rewind and remember how to spell things. So all the links to where you can find Rae and her books will be in the show notes. And thank you so much for the gift of your time, Rae. I love working with other authors and spotlighting their books and what they're doing. And thank you for the wealth of knowledge you've shared today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You have actually been a real inspiration for me in the past couple of years as well. So I really appreciate being on here for you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think that's what it's all about, like inspiring each other and helping each other and being resources for each other. And I just value your author friendship. So thank you for being on the show, and you have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and riding, just like me. Visit my website, carlykadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlykadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlykadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Kade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.